coming up.
There was something out there. It had red eyes and it looked like it wanted to murder us as it flew down from the tree.
Welcome to Unholy Vibes, a journey through the realms of true horror. Although not a religious podcast, our guests may present stories intertwined with personal faiths and beliefs to maintain authenticity. We welcome guests from various spiritual backgrounds, acknowledging the impact of their beliefs on their experiences. Thank you for joining. Let's dive in with an open mind and respect for all perspectives. We're back. We're right back at it. I am very ready to hear some spooky stories from you if you're ready to share them.
Oh, I'm so ready. I have one that I was actually talking about with my sister, and she was like, "Don't talk about this with me," because she still gets so scared about it. And
I love it.
it's seriously okay. So this is my favorite. This is my favorite story. Like I love to tell this story because it's so scary to me, but also it's just like it's so weird.
Is this the one I wouldn't let you tell me while we were on the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you wanna tell your little ones and then build up to this one?
Okay. Yes, I could do that. I could
Uh,
do that.
let's do that. Let's end with the banger.
Okay.
'Kay.
So the other stories that I have, a lot of them come from when I was in Texas. And so my husband and I would joke, if there's a place that's going to be haunted, it's going to be the United States South. Like we're two historians that taught United States history. Like it's a pretty dark place. A lot of terrible things have happened there. So like the ghost tours that we go on, something is always bound to happen because it's a pretty dark, scary place. So when we first moved into our apartment, which was back in 2018. It was January of 2018. So at the time we had our dog. And when we first moved into the apartment, it was, we never really had any weird stuff happen to us when we lived in Vegas, and we never really had any weird stuff happen to us when we lived in California. So we weren't like expecting weird things to happen. But as soon as we moved in, it just was like this weird vibe in the apartment. And it started with our dog, who we had a two-bedroom, and the guest bedroom, it was empty for a really long time because we didn't know if we were gonna make it into a guest room or make it into an office. So, we had a walk-in closet, and it was usually left open. And our dog hated that room. Like, he despised that room. He would go into the closet and he would just sit at the door of the closet and he would just bark all day long into the closet, which was really annoying at first because it was like, what is wrong with you? Is there something in the wall? Like, what's happening? So we didn't really think anything of it until we got all of our furniture for that room. And my husband doesn't believe in ghosts at all, but this really scared him. So we got all of our stuff in there, and we're big horror film people. We have so
Same.
much horror film memorabilia everywhere. And one of our favorites is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we have a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, like masks, collectibles, things like that.
Wow.
So that was the theme of the guest room. Of course, we were not really ever going to have any guests in there because who wants to sleep in a room full of Leatherface masks? But I digress. So we had this. We had this dresser, and we had just gotten, because in Texas, obviously, there's a place called the gas station, and it's where the original film was filmed. And it's now like a horror movie shop. It's really cool. And you can go there, you can stay the night. It's a really neat place, and everyone there's really nice. So we had gotten, and I think we had gotten this statue there. Maybe we didn't, but that's what my memory says. And it was this Leatherface statue, and his Leatherface like mid-run with the chainsaw. And it's really cool. And so we had it all set up and we put it exactly like he's getting ready to dance. And so we put it on the dresser and we shut the door to the guest room because we don't want our dog to go in there and bark like a crazy person all day. And we also don't want him messing things up, like going on the bed and going under it. So the door in that room is always closed. So a couple of weeks later, my husband had some of his clothes in that closet and he went in to go and get something. I can't remember what it was. But when he went in there, the Leatherface statue was on the other side of the room and it was broken. And we were like, there's absolutely no way that that could have happened because there's no like earthquakes in Texas. And an earthquake would not have shot it across the room. It would have just fallen off. It was across the room and face was off of his little stand. So that was weird. And then a lot of other weird things started to happen just in that room. It wasn't like the whole entire house or the apartment, it was just that room. And so like you'd hear noises or like we could always figure that something was going to be moved in that room because it it was just like this weird vibe in there. And then we left to go visit family, and we had a little Funko Pop of Sam from Trick or Treat. Because I love that movie, and Sam's so cute. And so we had him. He was in, because we're really OCD, and so we have them in like little, as if it's a museum. So we have them
Yeah.
in like little sections, all devoted to themselves. So we had a trick or treat section, and when we came back from our vacation, he was gone. And I was like, oh, that's really frustrating. He was so cute. And I was like, I don't want to think it's our dog sitter. And I mean, if maybe she took it, maybe she thought it was cute, whatever, that's fine. We can always get another one. So a couple of months later, I was going through my bookcase and I was taking my books out to like redo them. I think I was taking some to my office. And the Sam pup was behind my books facing the other direction. And I was like, now how did you get back there, little guy? Because I didn't do it. I don't think our dog sitter did that. And then I started noticing that my pops on that shelf would all be facing the other way when I would come back from work.
Dang.
And my husband was just like, that's not true. That's not really happening. And I'm like, I'm watching it. They're turning around. I don't know how it's happening, but yeah. So that was that apartment. And then we moved to another apartment and it was the same thing. So I kind of felt like an Insidious where they're like, the house isn't haunted, it's you. So it was weird. And then things started to escalate at that place because my husband was downstairs because this was a 2-story. And so my husband was downstairs and he was making coffee in the morning. And he turned around and he started talking to me and I wasn't even up yet. And so I walked down the stairs and he's like shaken because again, he doesn't believe in ghosts. He doesn't like nothing like this scares him. And he said, you were up talking to me this morning, like while I was making coffee. Like you came up behind me and said my name, like whispered it. I was like, no, I've been sleeping. I did not come down here. And he was like freaking out because he had heard somebody whisper his name behind him. And then a couple weeks later, he thought he saw me coming down the stairs and he went to meet me at the bottom of the stairs, but there was no one there. So I hated that because he would teach night classes until like 10 o'clock at night on Thursdays, where I was stuck at home by myself. Luckily, we had our dog at the time, so I wasn't the only breathing thing in the house, but it was really freaky. And so I want to say 6 months, no, it must have been longer than that because we moved 6 months ago. It must have been close to a year. The scariest thing happened where I was just like, I'm done. I cannot do this. And I would actually have one of my friends come over. She used to come over on Thursday nights to stay with me for a little while because I was just like, no, I can't do this. I was in my house. So the way that our apartment was 2 stories, we had my husband's office on the bottom floor with the kitchen and the living room. And then we had a landing area where my office was, and then our bedroom was upstairs. And so I was upstairs and I was on the landing doing work and I had I had all the lights off downstairs because when I'm home by myself, all the lights are on. Electric bill be damned. I'm not going to let a ghost like come and sneak up on me or a serial killer. Oh, and one thing, wait, I did forget to mention when we moved out of our last apartment, when I took things out of the closet, this really did scare me and made me wonder about not ghosts, but other things. There was a hole in the wall with a Band-Aid over it. Like,
What?
yeah. Yeah, and, like, I had pictures of the apartment when we first moved in, and there were no holes in my closet, but when we moved out, there was a nasty looking Band-Aid on the wall, and I was like, "What is this?" And I peeled it off, only to find that there was a peephole, and I don't know where the peephole went. I didn't wanna know where the peephole went, and I didn't wanna know how the Band-Aid got there because I sure as hell did not put a Band-Aid on my wall behind my clothes. So
Okay, okay, hold. You can't just tell me. Okay, hold on. This is an apartment, right?
mhm.
Is there someone living in your walls?
I have
Is
no
your
idea. Well, okay.
landlord actively engaged in your life? Are they coming into your house ever?
No, that was what was so and only maintenance people, but, like, I knew the maintenance people, and I was always there with them. But it's funny you should say that about people living in the wall because when I lived in Vegas, not to totally get off track of my other story, but when I lived in Vegas, we lived in a condo, and there was actually somebody living in our attic, like those horrifying stories that they tell you. There was somebody living in our attic who I totally forgot about this until you mentioned it. Hey, so I was
Your
living there.
life. What is your life?
That's what Sarah says sometimes when we're talking. So I was living in a condo with my mom and my sister, and it was condos, like a huge condo complex. And we came home one day and there was just like insulation all over the house. We were like, what is this? This is bizarre. So my mom was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to call an inspector to come out. But he couldn't come out for a couple of days. And in those couple of days, all sorts of really bizarre things started happening. We started missing cutlery, like forks and spoons went missing. And we're like, where are these? Some of my mom's clothes went missing. Someone peed on my sister's bed and it wasn't the dogs. And so we actually put masking tape on the attic thing because the attic thing came down in my sister and I's bedroom. We had a walk-in closet. And on a side note, when we were little, when we would clean it, we would throw things at each other and say, Hannibal Lecter's coming for you. And I don't know why we did that, but it made us terrified of the closet. And so knowing that there was maybe somebody coming down from the closet, like that made it even worse. So we taped up the attic thing. When the inspector came out, he went up into the attic and he said, there's a huge hole in the firewall. So someone has been coming up from the vacant condo next door and has been coming through your attic and down into your condo. And he said, we have to patch that up like immediately. So he said, and by immediately, it was going to be like a couple days later because he had to get the materials. So he left. And then when he came back a couple of days later, everything that was up there, because there had been stuff up there and there had been like some stuff that had been taken. It was like pictures and stuff that was put up there, and it was all gone and the hole had been patched up. So whoever, like, they knew that they had been found out and they patched it up. So yes, that is terrifying. Like the idea that there's somebody like living in your attic or like coming into your walls. So that's why when I saw the hole in that wall in my apartment, I was like, no, I don't even know. I'm not even going to think about that because I'm out of here.
I'm gonna
I'm no
vomit.
longer living here. Yeah.
Ooh.
So in the next place, we were on the bottom. We were still on the second floor, but we were not the top floor. So we didn't have that attic access. So I was like, whew, cool. What we did have was a ghost because that night when I was sitting up there and it was like complete darkness down in my downstairs area, my dog was sitting on my feet while I was working and I heard a noise. Like, that really distinct noise when someone turns on a lamp, like they've pulled on the little lamp cord.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, and we still have it to this day, a gigantic Borg cube from Star Trek
Nice.
that's a lamp.
You
And
big
it's
fat
one that
nerd.
oh yes. And you step on it and then it turns green. But like the click on that is the exact same as like pulling down a lamp.
Okay.
So I hear that click and I'm like, that's weird, but maybe my husband's home. So I go downstairs and I thought that it was the door. I go around the corner, but the Borg cube light is on and it was not on before. And I was like, nope, done. And so my dog, he hated me. He hated me for some reason. Like he loved me, but he also hated me. And so he hated when I would put on his little suit to go take him outside. And I was like, I don't even care. You can bite me. You can do whatever you want, but we are leaving right now. And
We're getting
so
out.
we sat out there, I think for an hour until my husband came home from teaching. And I was like, tears. Like I was like, I am not going back up there by myself. Like that was the scariest thing to me because I knew that something had turned on that lamp and I didn't know if it was happy that I was there with it or if it was really upset that I was there. So we left. We said, I don't think so.
Did you continue to live there?
We did until we moved here. We were only there for a couple more months after that. So what I did on those nights when he was not there was one of my former students just became one of my dear friends. And so she would come up every Thursday and we would go and get coffee at the Barnes& Noble. We were in a shopping center, so we would walk to Barnes& Noble and get coffee. She would hang out with me for a little while, and then I would turn on all the lights until he got home. And that's how I dealt with that.
Do you
And
think
sage.
Oh,
Sage.
man, saging. See, I know that sage is like a commonly used thing, like, oh, sage the area, get rid of spirits or whatever. I don't know the origins of that. I don't know the origins of like why sage, you know? Do you? Do you have any info on that? I don't.
I don't. I think a lot of it comes from just again going back to like indigenous religion, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's where it connects to, but I'm not 100% sure. I just know that as soon as that happened, I was like, I got some sage over here in this drawer, and this is what it was for. This is why I have it.
Do you think that the place was haunted, or do you think something maybe is following you around, or if you, do you have an object maybe that has something attached to it?
Now that I maybe an object? I don't know because I'd like to say that it was just the place and that it was just Texas, like where we were, that was just haunted.
Whereabouts in
But
Texas?
we were just outside of Houston.
You were in the Houston area. This apartment to apartment, both of them in Texas, and then you're here now.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would like to say that it was there, but then just the other night, we were and my husband's making fun of me even though he was just as scared as I was. We were, like, falling asleep, and, you're just, like, in that state of falling asleep kind of, and you don't know if you're sleeping or you're awake, and so the first night was it the same night or was it 2 different nights? I wanna say it was 2 different nights. This was, like, last week. We heard like, we were both in that, like, state of falling asleep, and it sounded like a spigot or a faucet just, like, dumped a bunch of water. And we both got up because we were like, "Oh, no. Is there a leak? What
Yeah,
happened?"
yeah.
And we ran all over the apartment, and there was nothing, like, not even the sinks were on. And so that was weird, but then the next night, I wanna say it was the next night, we were in that same, like, almost asleep phase, and again, that distinct sound of someone pulling a lamp. And we have 2 of those lamps in my apartment, where you have that pull down, whatever it is, right?
Like click, kinda like
And we
cha-chink.
yes, yes, the click. And we both sat up and we ran out and we looked, and my husband was like, "It wasn't a lamp. Don't worry about it. It wasn't a lamp." But I'm like, "No, no, that was the exact sound." And he immediately came out here to check the lamp that was in the living room to see if it was on, and none of the lamps were on. So that's a good question. Is it something that we have that is haunted? That's like a ghost following us? I don't know because I have a lot of stuff that's I would like to think that if it is, it's from stuff that I have from my family stuff because I have an altar area where I have stuff from my dad and my grandparents and the people who are no longer with us, right? So it'd be nice if it was them and they're just
Yeah.
like, "Hey, just popping in to say hi." But it would be nice if you didn't do it in such a scary way. Like,
Yes.
say hi,
Yeah.
but don't freak me out.
Right, and I mean, there's plenty of movies that depict things like this, and it escalates into crazier things, and real life or movies, you hear people that say like, "Well, don't engage because then it only gets worse." And it may try and make you think that it's like your family member, but it's actually not.
Exactly.
And so, ugh, I just got a little chills.
No,
Uh,
no, and you're like, you don't wanna be like, "Oh, yeah, come on back and say hi to me." It's kind of like, "Okay, you were here, I dealt with it."
yeah. My mom with her crystal shop, she does energy work and Reiki and things like that. She's sensitive, you know what I mean, to spiritual things. And she's said that if she runs into anything where there's what she feels is like a spirit attached to someone or following someone, she straight up is just like, "This ain't your place. Move on. Go towards the light or get lost." And that works for her, you know?
I like
Um,
that, I need that attitude.
because here's the thing. I've heard of other people's stories where they're like, "This is I live here now. You don't live here. I live here. This is my space. This is not your space. You're not welcome here." And you just tell it, "Be gone. Go on. Go on, get," you know?
I like that.
So maybe I mean, if things keep happening, maybe you just need to be like, "Listen, whoever's here, don't be here anymore. This is not your space. You're not welcome here." I don't know. Or just continue staging and see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
hey, I will see.
so you had another story you're telling me about, what was that like the story, like the finale story? You're still saving that for
No,
us?
no,
Okay.
those were just because I got off on that tangent because I totally forgot about somebody living in my attic.
I can't, I literally, when you were saying that, I'm like, I think I'm gonna throw up. Like, this is just so disturbing
It was
to.
really disturbing. And one of the days that we came home before we called about it, there was just a piece of wood with nails sticking up that was like, I mean, it was probably something that was in the wall, but it was just laying there by the front door, like where you would walk in, so you would step on it. And my
Ooh.
mom, we all just thought it must have fallen from the wall or something, but we had dogs and we were afraid that they were going to step on it. But after knowing all the stuff that had happened, like that this person was coming in, stealing stuff, my mom was like, sometimes you felt like you were being watched. Then it was kind of like, ew, there was somebody
Well,
in here. We have
and
no idea who it was.
there's that phenomenon. I forget the actual name of it, but it's you can feel that you're being observed. You
Yes.
can feel that you're being watched, and there's a whole thing. Anyway, the hole in the
No.
wall with the Band-Aid though, it makes me think maybe someone was trying to put a little camera somewhere, but why that room? That would have been a really ineffective place to peep on someone, right?
Well, and it would have been really stupid because there was stuff in front of it, the clothes and everything. Like, find a better spot because all you're getting a view of is bunch of old sweaters.
Yeah.
Unless that's your thing,
Yeah.
don't no judgment, but it was weird and it was really creepy, especially the dirty band-aid. It was a dirty band-aid.
And your husband wasn't just pulling an elaborate prank on you don't think?
No, and he was just like, "What is that?" And he's always the one who's like, "Logical explanation." And
Right.
I'm like, "What is the logical explanation for this dirty band-aid on a hole in the wall?" And he was like, "I
And
don't."
so he's straight up atheist or
Oh
something
yeah,
like that, like, there's no ghosts, there's no spirits, none of that nonsense.
exactly.
That's
There's
interesting.
nothing.
That's interesting.
But
I mean, how does that all happen? It's hard to apply logic to things that are illogical. These things happen to you. You're terrified. Those gut feelings are real. Intuition is
yes.
real. And calling back to a previous guest we had, she could have been in potentially in danger and was trying to talk herself out of it, like trying to downplay her own situation. And it's like, no, no, no. It's a good thing you trusted your gut because it just is. It just works. Call it the spirit, call it God, call it the universe, call it your gut, whatever. Something's out there saying, hey, something's not right here. And so I'm interested to see how he makes it all make sense in his mind. And I have friends that are atheist and agnostic that have had very scary things happen to them. And they accept that it's something they don't understand or can't explain it, which is
Well, I will
something.
I will say that when we were driving back from New Orleans this last year, I was foolishly on my phone while he was driving, and he saw something in the woods that he said the only way that he can describe it is like some sort of Bigfoot-like creature in the middle of the Louisiana woods.
What?
And yeah, and he knows in his mind that he can't process that he doesn't believe that that's real, but he has absolutely no explanation for that. And of course, I missed it because I was texting on my phone and he was like, "Oh my god, what was that?" And I look up and it's gone. And I'm like, "Damn it. I love Bigfoot and I would love to have seen him."
I know we just
Or I guess it's the
met.
skunk ape there.
I know we just met, but we're best friends already. I need to start taking
Seriously.
vacations with you guys to all the places you go.
Exactly.
um,
Just bring your family. We're gonna go look for Bigfoot in
yeah.
Louisiana.
Speaking of Bigfoot, side note, there's a book called Devolution by.
Yes, that book. Oh my
Have you
gosh.
read it? Dude,
Yes,
it's only like
that
that
book is
thick. It's what is it, Max Brooks or whatever, the dude who wrote
Max
World War
Brooks.
Z. That
Mel
book
Brooks'
is
son.
really
Yeah,
like Mel Brooks, like the comedian.
Mel Brooks. Yep.
I'm blown away. Dude, look at you just educating me. Anyway, that book is fantastic.
It's so good.
Sorry to sidetrack us.
That's
Your
okay.
your husband saw Bigfoot in Louisiana. That's cool. And he had to reconcile that in his own brain. I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about a lot of the happenings. But back to your haunted, potentially haunted object. Honestly, that's what my mind goes to.
Does that
Is
make sense? I'd like to know what it is.
or maybe your husband's haunted and he just is,
That's
you know,
that's gotta be it.
maybe you
I'm gonna
never
have to
know.
let him know.
Like, hey,
He's the
buddy,
one
we're
that's
gonna
haunted.
We're gonna need to go
We have
see
to
a
do an
priest. Yeah.
No.
Well,
So I'm gonna have to run in a couple of minutes, but I have to tell you my
yes, please, please, please.
yes. And going from Bigfoot kind of leads us right into this. So, okay, this was God, and I can see it so clearly in my mind. This must have been 2010. Was it earlier than that? Was it 2009? It was more than 10 years ago, we'll say. I was back home because my sister and I, we both went to school in Vegas and we would go back to Washington to visit my dad for Christmas break. And so it was snowing. There was a ton of snow. And the way that our house was set up is that it was my house. And we had our house, we had a pool, we had a big yard and an orchard, and there was woods behind our house. And then right next door was my grandparents' house. So it's important to note that there was this forest behind my house. And most of the forest had been cleared because they put a neighborhood behind it. So it was me and my sister, and then my sister's best friend, who she also refuses to talk about this. Like, if I bring it up to her, she will be so mad, like, because she gets so scared. So the three of us, we were waiting for my dad so that we could go next door to my grandmother's house so we could have dinner with my grandmother. And it was like probably 7 o'clock at night. It was dark. And so we're waiting because we don't know where my dad is. Turned out he had been sleeping. So he didn't know what was going on. So we were standing there and we had sliding glass doors that looked out onto my backyard. And you could see beyond my backyard into the remaining Douglas fir trees that were back there. So we're just waiting and we're like, "Ah, where's dad? Like, we want to go get dinner." And we notice on one of these branches that there's this huge mass of what we thought were leaves and fir needles and whatever and snow. And we're like, "Isn't it bizarre that that branch isn't like buckling? That's a huge mass up there." And so we're just kind of standing there. We're like, this is weird. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go get my binoculars because obviously I'm a nerd and I love bird watching. And so I've got binoculars back in the library. So I go to get the binoculars and I come back and I put the binoculars to my eyes and I look out there and the thing starts to move, like the mass. And I'm like, well, that's bizarre. And I focus on it and it turns and it's staring straight at me, and it has bright red eyes, and I'm like, "No, thank you." So I give the binoculars to my sister, and I'm like, "Do you see this?" And you didn't even need the binoculars to see its eyes. You could see it just using your own eyes looking out the sliding glass door across the way. That's how bright it was. And so Shelby, my sister's friend, she's like, "Oh my god." And my sister is now looking through the binoculars, and she's like, "Oh my god." This thing stands up on this branch, and it's like a person. It's like a huge person. It's like 6 or 7 feet tall.
Oh my.
And it's one of those things where you're just like, "This isn't real." I don't know. Like, you're making up a lot of stuff. And then it's still staring straight at us and it lifts up its arms and it has the biggest wingspan I have ever seen in my entire life. And it jumps from that branch, swooping straight at us, and then it dives off and it goes behind the barn. Because we had a barn that was like where my dad had his workshop. So we're screaming, we're freaking out because what the hell was a 7-foot man owl doing out on a branch in our backyard? So my dad wakes up and he's just like, "What's going on?" He was asleep the whole time. And he comes out and we're like, there was a huge beast outside. Like it was like Mothman's cousin on our branch in the backyard. And
This is
my
in
dad is
Washington,
just like,
right?
this is in Washington, right? And he's just like, "That's not true. That's impossible." Well, like, no, there was something out there. It had red eyes and it looked like it wanted to murder us as it flew down from the tree. And he's like, it's probably just an owl. I'm like, okay, we were looking up like all of these different owls to see how big they could be, and none of them were as big as what we saw. So we forced my dad to get dressed. He had to go out in the snow to check behind the barn. He didn't find anything. And then he expected us to walk over to my grandmother's house for dinner all by ourselves. We were terrified, and it's one of those things where when you tell people, they're like, "Yeah, whatever." But that night, like, my sister and her friend, like, I haven't talked to Shelby in maybe 5 years. I could text her right now and be like, "Remember the time we saw Owlman outside my house?" going to my grandma's house, and she would be like, "Shut up, I don't want to ever hear about that again," because it was so terrifying. Like, we were so scared. So scared. And that's probably the scariest thing. Like, yeah, somebody lived in my attic, weird stuff. But like that to me, that was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me.
Well, yeah, you saw it.
Yeah.
The attic person, you just saw their
Never
effect
saw the
side
attic
effects.
guy. No.
Wow, that is crazy. And nothing ever after that? Nothing?
Nope. Nothing.
No.
And
Wow.
like we went back out behind the barn to see if there was any disturbance, like in the snow. There was nothing. So to me, I'm like, all right, obviously it's Mothman's cousin. And I love Mothman. So if it was Mothman, I'm totally fine with that. Except that Mothman usually comes to like portend a disaster. There wasn't a disaster or anything like that. So I think it was just like Owlman, because Owlman is also like a cryptozoological creature. So
Facially, did
you
it
know,
look more like owl or man in the face?
it was a man's face shape with these red eye, but everything was so dark and distorted that you couldn't really see except for these red eyes, like bright red eyes. And that's why I kept going to Mothman like in the years later, because I remember watching a documentary about Mothman, and that was like the thing that people like that stuck out to them. The people that claimed that they saw Mothman was that he had red eyes. And I was like, ah, my weird owl person had red eyes. So I don't know if there's a connection there
Jeez.
or if these are two completely different cryptozoological creatures. But yeah.
Well, shoot, that is fascinating, and I know you have to get going, but let's do this again because I know you've got, there's a couple stories you shared with me involving some goo or whatever, right? That,
Yes, I was talking about that with my husband, and he was
yeah.
like, "That story is so scary." He has no explanation for it. And then I also have some other creepy happenings at my house back where we saw Mothman. This is years later. And if you're into just like scary stuff, I have some like serial killer stuff. Like I
I
have
love
some
it. Yeah.
stories from my youth. My mom was in real estate, and so there were two instances where we almost got serial killed, and it was pretty scary. So yeah, let's do this again.
Yes, please. Hailey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. It has been an absolute pleasure. You've been fantastic. And we're best
Oh, this
friends
has
now.
been
That's all there is to it. So
yes,
just know
that's
that now.
all there is to it. Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely, I cannot wait to do this again.
yes. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Hailey, do you want people to follow your social media? Do you have anything you want to promote while you're here?
Sure, they can follow my what is my social media? My Instagram, what is it? Creature Teacher X? Yeah, totally, and if you have stories that you wanna talk about, I love talking about this stuff, so anybody who wants to talk about this stuff or has a spooky story that they'd like to share, like, I'm totally down.
That's my
Please.
line. What? No, I agree. Hailey, her Instagram is Creature Teacher X. Yep. And of course, please, if you have any scary stories, whether it's aliens or murderers or Mothmen or Owlmen or ghosts or demons, anything, I want to hear about it. You can always reach us at Unholy Vibes Pod on Instagram, or you can email unholivibespod@gmail.com. Stay spooky, my friends. Thank you again, Hailey, and we'll see you next time.